excellent. So you announced Friday your decision to retire after the 2020 election.
Right.
Tell me about that decision.
Well, as I had mentioned in my statement that I put out, when I first got into this position, I really didn't intend to do this more than 12 years. I didn't make that widely known or something, but when we talk about term limits, I often said, I'm not a believer in term limits, but if we did have term limits, 12 years would make a lot of sense. That'd be 6 terms in the House and 2 in the Senate. So I wasn't planning to go past 12 years. And then Donald Trump got elected, and he did a lot of things I didn't agree with, as you might imagine. And I had a heart-to-heart talk with my wife, a number of talks, and we decided let's do it again, and did it again, and we won, and we got in the majority in the U.S. House, and I've been getting some good things done. We're in the majority, we're moving in the right direction, but at the same time I can continue to do that without running for re-election. I'm confident that being on the Energy and Commerce Committee, I can continue to work on rural broadband and all kinds of issues that are related to the district and important to the district. Keep working on veterans issues, which is a big deal for me, as you know. And so I decided that, I wouldn't go any further than this. Still got 20 months to do all the things I need to do. Hopefully we're going to find a very good candidate to take my place on the Democratic side. It will be a competitive election, there's no question about that. Donald Trump won the district by 4.1%. And he's on the ballot again, as far as I can tell, so it'll be a very interesting election. I'm confident that I could have won, but at the same time, I've been through it enough. I got 2 kids also, and my wife has 2 kids. We got 3 grandkids, and I'm planning to see a lot more of them than I have been able to up to this point.
In 2007, you took over for after Republican Jim Leach.
Right.
From your vantage point in Congress, what do you think his legacy has been for
Jim's?
For Jim Leach?
Oh yeah, Jim's a wonderful man, and we had a very civil campaign, the most civil in the country, and probably the most civil since. No, I think for Jim, I've always said that I thought his legacy was he's a man of decency and civility, and he's been talking about that a lot since I won that election, and I did my best to try to live up to those kinds of standards, being in office as well. But no, definitely that's a big part of his legacy.
He had, that's 30 years in Congress, 15 elections,
Right.
A very long, 3-decade career in Congress. And you've gotten a chance through your travels to see, to learn, to get a feel for the university, the university towns like Iowa City and industrial Muscatine, and I mean the peoples of the area. And I kind of wanted to hear you talk a little bit about sort of the peoples of District 2, the
Wow.
particular area.
Well, there are a lot of different folks and groups of folks in this district.
Certainly.
I mean, Decatur County, where Lamoni is. I was in Leon, part of Decatur County. I was at the hospital there yesterday. That's as far south as you can go in Iowa on Interstate 35, south central Iowa. Very different than Iowa City, as you might imagine. And then we have Davenport, which is also an industrial city, and that's very much of a swing district over there in Scott County. I won the county last time. I won Bettendorf. I was very happy about that. That's, tends more Republican, as you might imagine. And then we got Burlington and Keokuk, very working class areas that have faced a lot of demanufacturing, deindustrialization over the years. And those areas swung pretty hard to Donald Trump in 16, but I managed to win those in both 16 and 18. And just a vast swath of rural areas, as well. And so the Farm Bill was really important to those folks. And in Ottumwa, it's a very industrial town, but it's got John Deere, and it's got, a packing plant, JBS, it's a hog packing plant, and so we got like the United Food Commercial Workers Union there, we got the UAW, those folks work at the John Deere plant. So we got a lot of different interests, a lot of different folks in this district, but it swung hard to Donald Trump from about 12 or so points, for Barack Obama, 12 to 13 for Barack Obama, to 4.1 for Donald Trump, one of the biggest swings in all of the country. So it's been undergoing some changes politically.
The reason I ask about Leach's legacy is, you've held down 12 years, or since 2007. Is that right? Is that,
Been
that
seventh
right?
term now. It'll
Seventh
be
term.
14 in the end.
I'm kind of interested in how Iowa O2 has been a long-running district, right? You have
Right.
a 30-year career punctuated by a 12-year
Yeah.
or ultimately 14-year career.
Right.
What did speak to that a little bit?
Oh gosh, well, I mean, I hope that I've managed to stay in office in large part because of my interest in getting out into the district and hearing folks, whether they agreed with me or not, on a lot of the issues, and I think I've represented the district well. Oftentimes people in my own party have not appreciated some of my votes, as you know, but this district has become much more of a swing district in that sense, so I've got to represent as many of the people as I possibly can, and I'm proud of that. And Jim went through a couple of different redistricting periods. I went through one, but I think if you just go out and, as I say, meet people where they live, work, and play, and listen to them as best you can, represent them as best you can, that will serve you in the end for re-election. But for me, it was every 2 years, obviously, as was for Jim. But what you do, try not to run for re-election, really run for re-election until quite a long ways into your second year, because your job is to be a congressman, not to be a candidate. And so that's what I did, and just to learn about the district, get around, and do the best you can to represent as many of those people as you can.
And you've had a couple of Republican challengers that I'm thinking of. Is it Miller?
Miller Meeks.
Miller Meeks.
She got within 5 a couple of times.
She was able to raise over $1 million for her, I think, 2010 election,
Right.
And that tells. And I mean, the Peters campaign didn't nearly raise that much,
Right.
but.
Right.
That tells me that clearly, as recently as 2010, Republicans were really trying to push this district.
Right. And I wouldn't be surprised if I had stayed in, if they had tried to go after this,
Right.
because Trump won it, and presidential year, we'll see how that turns out.
When you announced your retirement, the Cook Political Report changed Iowa's 2nd district from likely Democrat to a Democratic toss-up.
And so did Sabato, and so did Inside Elections, yes.
That expresses a level of confidence and incumbency, right? That there's, I
Right.
think, a part of that is related
Sure.
to it's been a long-running district. Or do you feel that that's accurate? I mean, you've had a lot of, I don't know.
It is accurate. It is accurate. I have no doubt about that at
And
all.
so that adds to your seat to the two others that were on
It
the
does.
toss-up Democrats for the
That's
Cook
right.
Political Report.
There's going to be a lot of interesting things going on in these districts this time.
2020, the rest of us are already sweating 2020 coverage as is. You've already.
I'm sorry to add a burden to you,
but
yeah.
I'm quite excited, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
You're going to have a lot of action that you have to
I'm
cover.
wondering for you, tell me about that decision, because I mean, I understand that there's part of this is personal, part of this is a personal need.
A lot of it's personal.
A lot of it's personal, but tell me a little bit about sort of like how this factors into your party and your place as a strategic member.
Yeah, well, I thought about that. I mean, that's the one thing that I don't feel good about, leaving and knowing it's now a toss-up district. At the same time, it would not have been a cakewalk. It really is not a safe district. One of the 3 ratings agencies put it as safe. The others put it as likely Democrat. But what that means is that it's potentially competitive under particular circumstances, just not at that particular moment. And so I think that's what a lot of people don't understand, is that it was never, ever a safe district. It's never going to be a safe district unless things work out the way you want them to work out. But I thought about that, of course. But I'm confident that we can find a Democrat to run this district who will win the district. I wouldn't have gotten out of this had I not thought that was going to be the case.
And you've given yourself these are 2 years to sort of
20 months,
that.
that's exactly right.
Has anybody approached you about considerations to run?
A good number, yes.
And any of these have they announced?
No, I don't think anybody's announced yet that I'm aware of. So.
I think there's the common wisdom will tell you that now these are extraordinary times and that things have changed, games have changed. For you, has Iowa's 2nd congressional district changed? Do you feel like the votes and the voters have in some way? Is this a different vote? Is this a different group of folks that elected you in 2007?
I do think that it's become more divided, more partisan, as the country has. There's no question about that. But at the same time, I think it's fully within the realm of possibility for anybody who wants to take my place to get out and do the things that I did and try to cross those partisan boundaries. And that's what I did. And I think it's entirely possible for the Democratic nominee this next time to do that. And that's what it's going to take. But it is more divided, and it is uglier, and it is less civil than it was when I first ran in 2006. There's no question about that. But that doesn't mean that a Democrat can't win. And I'm confident I would have won had I stayed in, but now we have this situation.
I had heard rumors that there was a primary there if you'd stayed in office, that there was going to be a primary from the left. And
I had heard that there was something like that going on, but I didn't know.
The same thing came up last time. I mean, I don't think it's a new rumor, right? But that there was going to be the sort of leftier end of the Democratic Party was going to put forward a challenger for the primary.
I know that there have been rumors in the past too for that sort of thing, right?
What do you make of that? I mean, because the Democrats, I think, are trying to straddle this sort of like Ocasio-Cortez's of the world, this emergent, younger, leftier end of the party, while also managing to try to be a Big Ten party. And what do you make of that?
My only response to that is the 2nd District of Iowa is not Queens, New York.
Right.
And that's my response.
It's not Queens, New York, but perhaps like we're sitting here in downtown Iowa City, right?
And Iowa City and Johnson County will be 1 county out of 24, correct?
With a huge population.
Right. Not huge, but it's second biggest. Yeah. Scott County is the biggest county.
I've grown just from like what I'm looking at. It's a very large population as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. And I'm curious for you, how do you think about the balancing act? That I think your generation of politicians.
I just do what I can to, like I said, get out there and talk to as many of those people as possible. You can't satisfy everybody, that's for sure, but you just do what you can, to hear what they have to say and try to represent them as best you can. And that's why I said I hope that whoever the nominee is recognizes the diversity in this district. That's really important.
Are there some, you talk a lot about rural broadband, you've already mentioned veterans issues, you've talked a lot about healthcare in the 2018 election. What kinds of standards will need to be on the banner for in your mind, for a Democratic candidate to seize the primary?
You mean in terms of policy?
I'm thinking about policy, but I think if there's another place you'd like to go with that question.
No. I think you talked about a number of the things already. I mean, I'm not going to put any litmus tests on anybody myself. I know that there are folks who want to do that, but I'm not going to do that. I think the issues have already emerged to some extent. I do think healthcare maybe is even more important now than it was before because of President Trump's assault on the Affordable Care Act. And in the short term, what we have to do is make sure that we protect that as best we can. And we got to make sure that the 10 essential benefits that are covered by ACA healthcare plans are there, and that every plan has those 10 essential benefits. That we don't discriminate against somebody because they have a pre-existing condition. That we don't kick somebody off their parents' health insurance if they're 25 years old, for example. Those kinds of things. And those are really critical issues because, as you know, the Affordable Care Act, as a result of the Affordable Care Act, we've got over 20 million more people on health insurance than was the case before that. And that right now is the most immediate concern when it comes to health care, is making sure that we fight back against the Trump administration, what they're trying to do in the courts.
Right.
All right.
Let me see here. Again, going back to how Iowa's 2nd congressional district has been a district that's prone to incumbents, right? We're prone to having long.
Well, they often say that Iowans like their incumbents, but we did throw out a couple last time, so I don't know if we can say that anymore.
Well, it seems to hold true at least for the 2nd district. And I'm curious for you, and I mean this isn't to say that they haven't been contentious. There have been 2010.
Keep in mind, I voted for Jim Leach a few times myself, as a Democrat. Yeah.
For a candidate to hold office in this district, what are some challenges, as someone who's held this district for 14 years, what are some challenges that you ran into in terms of trying to make Iowa City and I don't know, say Muscatine, business interests in Muscatine? How do you balance agrarian interests and maybe the interests of Cedar Rapids?
It takes a lot of work. That's the thing. As I said, getting out all the time to these different counties. I mean, I would work 6 to 7 days a week and just get around and hear what they have to say. And then when I go back, try to represent them as best I can. There were times, obviously, when interests would conflict, but you do what you think is the right thing to do. And sometimes you have to pick, whatever the case may be, and then you hope that if the people you don't pick, they know about it, you hope that they're going to forgive you and still support you, as time goes on. But you can't make everybody happy. You have to make choices from time to time. And I think a big part of it is just getting out and hearing what they have to say. I think there's a real capacity for people out there that I've found, even in this polarized environment, this less civil environment. There are a lot of people who, if you don't vote the way they want you to vote, so long as you hear them out, and so long as you give them the time and the respect, they're not going to necessarily hold that against you. Most of them won't vote for you if you don't vote the way they want you to vote. There's no question about that. Especially on folks on the other side of the aisle. But for the most part, people will listen if you listen, and they'll respect you for listening to them. And that's what I find. It sounds kind of simple and kind of quaint, but it's actually still true.
In thinking about, we talked a little bit about Jim Leach and his legacy and how you remember it going forward. What do you think? What is the legacy that you were going to leave behind?
I was afraid you'd ask that question. I don't have any idea at this point. I just made this decision. I've got 20 months left. You might want to ask me that in 2021. But the one thing that I hope people do think about, and it goes back to what I just said, I want people to think and believe that I heard them out. And even if I didn't agree with them or they didn't agree with me, at least I listened to them. And sat down, didn't give them short shrift, paid the respect that we need to pay them, because they're voters, they're citizens, even if they don't vote, they're constituents and they need to be heard. Got a wonderful office full of people here and in Washington, D.C. who work on constituent issues all the time. I'm very lucky to have all these folks, and I think that's the one thing I hope people remember at this point. Now I'll think of some other things as time goes on, but for now that's it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. All right.